Dan Hunt, and this is Up Close and Personal. We are at the Aria Hotel, Casino Resort and Spa in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, at the very first World CryptoCon. And my special guest right now, Mr. Michael Terpin. He is the founder, CEO of Transform, and I've been talking to him for the last few minutes. You are much more than that. Thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
So, before we get into what you're doing now, let's figure out where you came from. So, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York. Kind of cold there.
Very cold there.
And normal childhood?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, loving family and a very creative, working class family.
Okay.
My mother, until she had family, was stenographer. I don't think that position exists anymore.
That doesn't exist anymore.
Right. And my dad was always an artist. He went to art school, but then dropped out of art school to raise a family, and had to go and use his creative skills to go and design wallpaper at a wallpaper factory, and then work as an industrial silk screener. Got very good at it. Actually made some technological processes that still exist to this day. Now he's retired and gets to paint all the time. He's 95 years old, still painting and,
wow,
and putting things on Facebook every day. He's had two one-man art shows in Buffalo since he turned 90.
So over the last 3 days, I have interviewed, 30 or 40 CEOs and owners of companies, and I'm finding one common thread among all of them. They were all entrepreneurs at a very early age. You told me a story that your dad just recently moved into an assisted living, and you found a card from when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that first business that you had.
Turpin's Coins.
Turpin's Coins.
So I was interested in numismatics.
Okay.
Way before Bitcoin, there were coins. There still are. And I just would get pennies and say, oh, what's this old-looking one? Oh, it's a 1943 or whatever, And then I would look and say, oh, this one's worth more than 1 cent. It's worth $1 or whatever. And I was fascinated by that. And I used to go then to local flea markets, and I would buy coins that I thought were underpriced there, and then I would go and sell them as a mail order business. And that was Terpin's Coins when I was 10, 11 years old.
Turpin's Coins. You might want to bring that back.
Exactly. I found the card when I was going through my dad's house, which they were putting up for sale.
We are here, and it's the last day of World CryptoCon, so you might hear some noise in the background, but like every crypto event I think I've ever been to, there's a Lambo in the room, and they're getting ready to take it out.
That's
so
right.
We're just going to push right on through and let that go. High school. Let's go back to your high school.
Sure.
What did you want to be when you grow up?
I knew from a very early age I wanted to be a writer. I wasn't sure what that meant. When I was in first grade, there's a class assignment to go home and write a story. They didn't give any word length. I came back with 7 typewritten pages. Most people had a paragraph. So they showed it all around the school. They're like, who is this kid? And the reaction I got said, oh, I guess I must have something somewhat special at age of 5 or 6 or something. And so I really developed that, and I still first and foremost think of myself as a writer and a thinker, and then I've obviously been able to figure out how to make a business out of being able to, I think writing is key in that you're able to take your thoughts and put them in a way that other people can understand.
Did you have a hero growing up? Somebody that you looked up to, somebody you wanted to emulate?
I suppose during those days it would have been other writers. I liked Edgar Allan Poe. On the journalism side, because I was thinking that's a way, since they weren't hiring for great American writer or novelist. Woodward and Bernstein. I went to high school shortly after the Nixon years, and
right.
So it was. It would have been. Those were kind of the swashbuckling journalist.
So, you told me a story about going to college, but you like to figure things out. So you looked at the system and you figured out the system. How did you do that? Tell me about the college system.
Well, I think it's just necessity is the mother of invention. So my dad, when I was going to Syracuse, was unemployed because his factory was on strike.
Right.
And he's like, hey, I can't help you go to some fancy school. It actually helped because I qualified for more financial aid because he was unemployed.
There you go.
And counterintuitive, right? And then I realized that they were giving me, and I also had an academic fellowship, and so I looked at like what they gave me. I pretty much had a free ride for like the first 2 years, and then the third year I had a loan that I needed to take out, and the fourth year would have been like more than the entire first 3 years together. So I thought, how do I go and make sure that I graduate in 3 years? And I also was interested in both English literature as well as journalism. So, you know, if I wanted to go back and become great American novelist, or also I want some awards in poetry, I could pursue that creative side while still getting something I could be employed by. So I got a degree in English literature, degree in newspaper journalism from Newhouse School at Syracuse, one of the top schools in the world, and figured out how to do it by going home. Instead of working a job in the summer, I would just go to the state school in Buffalo during the summer, transfer the credits, got 2 degrees in 3 years, and beat the system.
Got 2 degrees in 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about your education more. You went back and actually have more degrees than that.
I got my my Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing because I knew that a master's would help you on the business side, whatever the master's was in. Nobody seemed to care, just master's preferred. And if it's going to be master's of any kind preferred, I'd rather go and do it in creative writing so I could really kind of see whether I wanted to, you know, at age I think 24, 25, whether I wanted to. I'd already been in the business world for a couple of years. I you know, been a newspaper reporter chasing fire trucks and covering you know, City Hall, and then I got my first PR job at Clarkson University. And you know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do business or if I still wanted to kind of pursue being the great American novelist and poet. And so going back and just spending a year writing kind of got out of my system. I still love writing, but I realized that it wasn't something that I was going to want to devote my life career-wise to.
Is there a half-written novel somewhere sitting on the shelf?
There's a couple of them, actually. I got them all sketched out.
You got them all sketched out?
Yeah,
you think they're going to be there?
Never know. Maybe it'll be, my dad's now 95 and paints every day. Maybe I'll finish those novels when I'm 95.
You know, we talked a little bit about our life. We're about the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, technology has taken over the world. So in my world, black and white television, there wasn't even color television invented, and here I am on a 5K machine, you know, editing these shows.
Sure.
But in your world, you started out as a newspaper writer.
Mm-hmm.
And a newspaper today is almost a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Tell me about that evolution in your life from the guy that wrote it on a typewriter, right?
Yeah, on a typewriter initially, and then my first newspaper job was a very high-tech, you know, DEC PDP-11, you know, and mini computer, and you know, the technology evolves, and if it's a good technology, it eventually displaces the older technology, and so. You know, if it's not a good technology, then it loses, right? So it's not like, you know, you're forced to adopt new technology, but you have people with great ideas and they build great teams and companies, and you know, if it doesn't work, then it gets replaced by something else. And that's just the evolution of progress.
Now, you've always been at the forefront of things, and when you started your first PR firm, America Online was one of your clients, right?
Correct.
How did that work out? Tell me about that.
Well, you know, that was the early days of them. I think they were split adjusted about 50 cents a share, and they came to me because they were actually wanting to get the online companies off this silly internet thing, and to go and develop on America Online. And so we actually did some forum marketing that would be the equivalent of social media today, and we advised that they go and post in one of the news groups called AOL Sucks. They were horrified by that, and they said, no, this is the way you get your enemies to say, oh, they're coming to apologize. They're coming to say, we will take the developers seriously, because literally, they were really focused in the early days of getting Time Magazine online, and just the big brands.
Right.
And they have these little local people knocking on their door saying, hey, we got an idea for like a stock, you know, online service, Getaway Kids, right? It was the Motley Fool. When they finally launched the AOL Greenhouse, which we were there from the day one of the founding of it to doing all the PR for it and all the big rollouts. You know, it's a couple of guys with funny hats, and now they've become one of the leading online financial services. So again, it's the fast sometimes, you know, beating the slow. It's not always the big beating the small.
So right now you're the founder and CEO of Transform Group. What does that do?
So Transform Group is sort of a transformation of what my career in PR has been. I started out with an agency, traditional agency, but focused on technology. And I wanted to move into whatever was new and cool so that I could learn about it before my competitors would, become an expert in it, the journalists would come to me, and then I would be able to get, know who the cool clients were. And so that happened in video games. We were the agency of record for Konami for 5 years. In CD-ROM, when that was sort of a thing for about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
We had a dominant position there. And then all of a sudden, when that crashed, because basically Microsoft and EA bought up all the shelf space, all these CEOs flipped over to this new thing called the internet where you couldn't buy up shelf space.
Right.
Anybody could publish. Now, the advent of portals and things like that meant it became more expensive the later you got in. But this fascinated me, and I just studied and studied the internet as much as I could. It also led me to then starting my own internet company in 1993, about the same time as I got into having clients. And so I guess you could say I've always been a serial parallel entrepreneur. So
Right.
I'll do a couple things at once because I'll try to get them to have synergies. And so I started the first internet-based press release distribution service called Internet Wire. It was backed by Sequoia Capital, Hummer Winblad. We ended up selling it for $35 million. It then got sold. We partnered with NASDAQ. It then got sold again, and then then the last sale from NASDAQ to West, which is a division of Apollo, was for about $335 million. And it was a crazy idea in the early days. We were attacked for the internet is unstable, you need satellites and fax machines, and now it's all pretty much what I developed.
Somebody to do that, you have to have a mindset that's different than everybody else. Tell me about mindset and how important it's been in your life.
Sure.
As we're moving forward.
Well, one big hero of mine is, of course, Steve Jobs. And, he's pretty much always been, you don't do focus groups because if you did a focus group before the first automobile, they would have said they want a faster horse. I think that's what Henry Ford said, right? And so he always said no. People attacked him for going after, when Apple was at a really low point and he had just come back in to the company, he launched the iPod, right? And everybody's like, wait, you're going after a market dominated by the Chinese with a more expensive product? You're going to get killed.
You're going to get killed.
And he's like, no, it's a better product, and it's a better looking product, and people care about design. And he's created what has been at times the largest company in the world by doing that. And so I think for the most part, you have to go in and really look and understand what you're making decisions on, have a vision, and then pursue it until the facts change.
What would you tell the kids today that, and I hear this all the time, I can't be done?
Well, those are negative people that you should disassociate with, because you can always find someone who says that something can't be done. You have to figure out what you want to do and surround yourself with people who are going to help you get there.
Okay. Let's talk about getting there in the crypto space. So you're one of the early adopters. You're the first guy at the table, or one of the first.
I've been called the ICO Godfather, the Crypto Godfather, and I was just this week named number 4 influencer of ICOs.
Number 4 influencer of ICOs. That's actually a lot of responsibility to carry around. How do you look at
number 3 just spoke earlier today, Charlie.
Yeah, that's right. How do you go about influencing an ICO, or what's your thought process as you're looking at one of these?
I get approached a lot. We have a strategy group as well as we have a PR group. We have an events group. We run the Coin Agenda conferences. That's been 5 years now. Spun off of Bit Angels, which I started as the first investment group of angels in early 2013 with David Johnston,
right.
Who's now chairman of Factum and an influencer on his own. I think it's really trying to go and guide companies and people with good ideas to take the right path to both be true to their own vision and to the realities of the market. Like if you looked at the market last year, you'd come to me and say, yeah, I want to raise $100 million in a white paper. Could have done it last year. This year can't do that.
Right.
Any more than, the realities of the market were different in late 1999 than late 2000 or 2001. And so these are just markets, and it's market timing, and you have to know where you are in your market. You have to know where you are in your ability to create products, create services, create community. Community is incredibly important in this space.
Did you think Bitcoin was going to be what it turned out to be?
Yes. Really, from the first day I learned about it.
From the very first day you learned about it, you felt it was going to really take that rise?
I read the white paper. I saw people who were passionate that it was going to be $1 million. I looked at the things that could stop it, and I thought, yes, it has a 1 or 2% chance of going to zero, but it's got a much higher percent chance of going way higher than it is today, or back then when I first got in and it was $120. I was ticked off that I didn't get in the year before because I was invited to a conference the year prior when it was $4, and I ended up sending somebody else to the conference, and I said, anything interested in the conference? Like, no, not really.
Not really.
Whereas when I was there, I was like, oh, this is going to change the world. I mean, I probably only had like maybe 3 this will change the world moments when I saw it and said, I get it. I didn't even have it with a personal computer. I mean, I sort of saw that was evolutionary and it'd be better than mainframes or mini computers. But I got it when I saw my first copy of Mosaic before Netscape.
Right.
It was Mark Andreessen, the number 2 influence next to Vitalik, and we launched Ethereum. So I guess I've been involved with kind of a number of those things. So, but you look at Mosaic, and you've been on the internet before, and you've seen what it looked like in Linux in a kind of a internet in a university environment. Then you all of a sudden go and you look at Mosaic, which became, later variation became Internet Explorer. And you type in Louvre.fr and there's paintings in the Louvre.
Right.
That was revolutionary for its time. You just couldn't do that before. You could go and take a local area or a wide area network and get to something in the other room, go to Dry F, but you couldn't go to Drive France.
Exactly.
Right? Until you had the World Wide Web in '91, and by '94, there was a lot of passion, a lot of development. So it's taken us, I think, 10 years in Bitcoin to get where the web took us. Although I suppose you could say that really the early Bitcoin wasn't the start of the web, it was the start of the internet, which was '69.
Right.
So in that way, it's sort of been a compressed time frame. But I firmly believe that, when I first got in, there were maybe a couple 100,000 people in Bitcoin, and that was up from a couple of hundred a few years earlier. Now we're at maybe 25 to 40 million, depending on whose numbers you use. 25 million was the number of people in the world on the internet in 1995. Today there's 4 billion.
4 billion.
4 billion people on the internet.
Right.
You know anybody with a phone that's not on the internet? Even in Africa, right?
Exactly.
So, so I think that we're going to follow a similar path, if not quicker, because A, we don't have to build the internet all over again. If you have a phone and/or the internet, you can go and make the blockchain work.
Well, that's absolutely incredible. It has been so great to sit here and talk to you today. Let's just talk real quick about World CryptoCon and this event.
Sure.
We're actually sitting here, and behind us, the whole event is being torn down because it's actually over. But tell me what your thoughts are. This is their first shot off. How do you feel? Tell me about your impression of what happened here this week.
Sure. No, I think the team has done a great job. For the most part, I saw them announce it. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Las Vegas. I'm a resident of Puerto Rico, but I spent 10 years here prior. I still have some investment properties here, and there's a lot of new shows this year, but they seem to have done it right, and it looks like they're going to be around for the long haul.
Yes, it's a great show. A lot of great speakers. I know you spoke earlier today. So thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice to sit down and talk to you. From the Aria Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, at 2018's World CryptoCon, I'm Dan Hunt, saying have a great rest of today and an even better day tomorrow.